Hello there, and welcome back to another Friday night in hopefully what is the direction of another beautiful Friday night, but with how things are going, who knows? Anyway, I am Rafael de Furia, back at it again, and tonight I wanted to talk about something that I referred to last time in last week's video about the situation with Americans being able to come to Italy, because it seems as though a decision was finally made, and not just about Americans. But before we get too much deeper into the video, if you would like to see more content like this about moving to Italy, Italian dual citizenship, and living life abroad, please be sure to subscribe and hit the like button and share it with your friends, because that really does help out the channel. And of course, what really does help out the channel even to be able to continue is you guys who are the patrons who make these videos possible. So thank you so very much to those of you who've really become part of this. And as is often the case, it is time to bust out the glasses yet again, because tonight I do have some information that I do need to read out. Because from the official European Council of the European Union website, Council agrees to start lifting travel restrictions for residents of some third countries. Basically just kind of skipping across to what are the countries that can currently travel or will be able to travel is from July 1st onwards will be Algeria, Australia, Canada, Georgia, Japan, Montenegro, Morocco, New Zealand, Rwanda, Serbia, South Korea, Thailand, Tunisia, Uruguay, and subject to confirmation of reciprocity, China. But then residents of Andorra, Monaco, San Marino, and the Vatican should be considered as EU residents for the purpose of this recommendation. Those countries, those last little countries that are micronations where it's just within the borders of the European Union, to me that makes perfect sense why those countries would be included within the European Union. Recently I asked a question on Instagram about how you guys feel about the situation, and when this was kind of just an idea that they were talking about before this was even finalized, how did you feel about the idea of Europe closing off to some nations, including the US? And a lot of you seemed to be for it. But when I asked about other countries such as China being allowed to come, but not other countries like the US to be able to come here, a lot of you seem to be really unhappy about that. Some countries were being allowed, some countries weren't being allowed. And I would have to say that my sentiments, my feelings kind of might be along similar lines. In my opinion, a lot of the countries on this list to me don't personally make that much sense. New Zealand, because their numbers have been like so insignificant and so small in comparison with the rest of the world, like even I know for a while their numbers were at 0. That to me would make sense that fine, they didn't have cases, they're safe. But if you're talking about Australia, I can't confirm this and I don't remember 100%, but I feel like it was just last week that I saw a news headline that said Melbourne was getting a second wave and was getting hit pretty hard. So I'm just trying to understand, where is this coming from? Why are these countries specifically? I am assuming it's because of numbers, but then I've also seen a bunch of articles online that named some of these countries specifically, saying that the numbers weren't actually accurate. So it does make me concerned. Would I think that Americans at this point in time should be able to come to Europe? I would be very concerned about that, especially with the recent rise in the numbers there that seem to maybe possibly be related to current events that are happening in America. It seems as though that there's very much a mindset of pro-mask, but when it comes to making a political stand, that some of these rules seem to become flexible. That's just the way, from someone living abroad, that's the way it looks from the outside in rather than the inside out. But even from some American news sources that I've kept up with, that this kind of does seem to be the case anyway. But then there are other news sources that saying that there's no correlation between the two. At this point, I don't know what to believe. It all seems like really whacked out. But personally, like I said, I wouldn't say that I would feel comfortable with Americans and even people from other parts of the world coming here if a person is a citizen and does have the legal right to come to their home country, then this is completely a different case. But then that even brings up the question about dual citizenship and Italian Americans who get, or Brazilian Italians, Italian Brazilians, I should say, Italian Argentinians, and people who are of Italian descent who get their citizenship but have maybe never even been in the country before. That does kind of, it feels like it definitely, on a legal perspective, is not a different category. And even the way that the Italian government recognizes these people, it's not a different category. But there is that lack of tangible connection. Yes, there's an emotional connection, and that's something that I've definitely spoken about a lot on this channel, how people are so intrinsically connected to this country for reasons that they can't even explain themselves, that they have this deep bond with the nation. But we are currently facing a situation that it seems like even the people who know up from down don't know up from down. It's what's the right way to go about these things? Who knows? But if you were to ask me, what would I personally feel comfortable with, and even the people that I've spoken to who also live where I live, we all kind of here seem to have a similar feeling that we would feel more comfortable if Europe were closed off to the rest of the world for now, even though economically, living here in Italy, American tourism and tourism from other nations is very necessary. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly, but this is just to kind of give an idea, a rough outline. But I believe American citizens alone who travel to Italy end up spending about $5 billion per year. It's or at least that's the industry that's created by having American tourism here. Countries like Italy and Spain, Portugal, Greece, the Mediterranean countries in general rely a lot upon tourism. It's a major industry in these countries. Whereas Northern European countries could much more easily get away without the same level of tourism because they have more industry like building, manufacturing, businesses, and so on. Not that Italy and Spain and the Mediterranean countries don't have these, but they just don't have it on the same level as some Northern European countries. So it's much more detrimental to the Southern European countries than it might be to the Northern European countries. Of course, I am not a financial expert. I am not a medical expert. I'm none of these kinds of experts. But just if you look at it from a kind of basic, just regular average person's perspective, certain things seem to make sense. And I know after talking to other people that I'm not the only person who feels this particular way. And especially here where I live in this area, our numbers are almost back at zero, if they're not already at zero. We had very few cases during the pandemic, and even now we have even fewer. But even in Italy in general, the numbers have been getting a lot better. Yes, there are still some horrible places that are really dealing with a very tragic issue, the whole nation as a whole. But even a lot of parts of the South were barely touched. Sicily, but even though I'm very far north and not all that far away from some of the worst affected areas, and even some of the first areas that were first locked down, here where I live was very minimally affected. So people where I live are a bit frustrated with the situation, having to wear masks. Now at this point, we don't have to wear gloves inside of places anymore, at least most places. I think hospitals, some places you still have to, or at the very least, sanitize your hands. They provide sanitizing gel basically everywhere you go. You can't enter into a place without seeing a bottle of gel. But a lot of people here are frustrated with the masks, even though they're only necessary to wear inside, but because it's so hot now, it makes it very difficult to breathe. And even for me, like, I'm somebody who, even after just putting it on for a minute or two, I start getting difficulties and start even sometimes feeling a little bit of pain in my lungs. And I don't really have lung issues. When I was a kid, I had asthma, but I basically outgrew that. But this is the closest I've had to those kind of pains or reactions that I used to get when I was a kid in I don't even know how long. And of course, I know there's going to be somebody in the comments who would respond to exactly what I say. Well, just imagine how medical professionals feel. And by what I'm saying, I am not meaning to diminish that at all. Of course, that is a horrible situation. That is a disgusting disgusting thing that is so necessary for a person to have to wear an FFP2, FFP3 mask for 9, 12, 15 hours at a time. That is absolutely horrific. But I am just sharing the opinions of people that live in the area where I live. And I would say I would kind of agree. And I would even say that I may even share some of those same feelings. Because if we're looking at it from a realistic standpoint, based on what government organizations have said, health organizations and so on, that the average mask doesn't do anything, at least for the user. If a person has a cold and they're sneezing and so on, then it protects the people around them. But if we're talking about this, again, YouTube, if you've been watching my videos recently, you'll know, if you've been watching anybody's videos recently, you'll know that just there are certain things you can't really talk about without getting punished on YouTube. So with this current situation, this current health situation, that the particular little buggeroo itself is so small that you need at least an FFP2 mask, N95, but there are sources that say that nothing less than an N99 or an FFP3 mask would be enough. And then, of course, to consider that potentially can come in through your eyes and you could contract it that way. So a lot of the people here where I live don't feel like they're being protected by these masks and feel as though it's an extra burden because we've had so little numbers here that it almost feels unnecessary, especially if the types of masks that most people are wearing wouldn't really protect them anyway. So it's a tricky situation, but of course people are, of course, following the rules because it's the law. You've got to do what you got to do. But do I see people who are being a little bit lenient when it comes to these things? I am starting to see that more and more now. The social distancing rules, some places, some restaurants and cafes are enforcing it more than others, where I've seen even on the main piazza here where you're supposed to have like the 1 meter distance and this and that. That's become a bit fuzzy and you're only supposed to have X amount of people at a table and you're seeing 4 times, 5 times, 6 times the amount of people at a table that are supposed to legally be there, and nobody's really doing anything about it. Again, because people are feeling pretty comfortable because the situation here isn't like the situation in other places and we haven't seen a rise in numbers. We have basically things have just kind of almost gone back to normal in a way. So that's why people here are concerned about having people coming from abroad, from other places, that would be potentially bringing that with them, that would make the situation here worse. It is so hot right now. I have to turn something on. Normally I would never do this during a video because it makes way too much noise, but it has been so hot here recently. It is beyond ridiculous. I just had to turn on the fan. Hopefully it should kick on in a second. Hopefully it doesn't make too much of a noise. But anyway, there are a lot of people who, oh yeah, that's probably going to make a ton of noise. Hopefully this isn't too loud. I'll end this video in just a minute here, hopefully. But this is, again, why people are so, they're concerned here about having people come from abroad, even though it is necessary for the economy, for the Italian economy, to have visitors and travelers come here, because just that's what people rely on for their income. Even recently, there was a poll done, and it said something like 60% of Italians are not planning to take a vacation this year because they simply just can't afford to because of what's happened. So many people have lost their jobs, taken pay cuts, or just their lives have been thrown into so much uncertainty that they're concerned about going places. I have spoken to Italians here where I live that they said they'd be willing to travel around Italy, but outside of Italy, they would be concerned. Maybe going to like Croatia or Serbia or Austria or the places that are like close by where you could get back and forth very easily. But most of the people that I've spoken to aren't really interested seriously in traveling abroad for a vacation at this point in time, even though they would really like to. But we are seeing the country kind of return to a sense of normal. Even I believe it's either Milan Linate or Malpensa. I can't remember which airport. One of the Milan airports has reopened after all this, or will be reopening soon. So we do see that Italy is getting ready to welcome people back into the nation. But will this list that the European Union has decided is okay, will that actually keep us safe in the end. A lot of people that I've spoken to are very doubtful about this list. I'm personally concerned about it, but who knows, it could be completely fine. We'll have to see as time goes on, because there is literally no way of knowing until we get to that point where we can see what the situation is. Anyway, if you have any feelings about this, please feel free to leave that down in the comment section below. As always, this is an open conversation. I'm always interested what people have to say about these topics that I speak about. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me, why you agree or why you disagree. To me, it's always fascinating to hear the way that other people approach the situation and why they do. Because sometimes two people may agree on something, but the reasoning behind that and the way that they arrive at that decision could come from completely different perspectives. Anyway, again, thank you so much to those of you who are helping to make these videos possible through Patreon, and thank you to those of you who have been subscribed to this channel and liking these videos and sharing these videos. It is very greatly appreciated. Of course, as always, I am Rafael de Furia, and I will see you all next time. Later.